Alright, so for this effect to work, you're going to need something that you can program a camera move into, with it repeating that same camera move over and over again. So in this case, I used a DJI Ronin S, and you could probably use any other sort of gimbal similar to the DJI Ronin S, which will allow you to access an app inside and allow you to add tracker points, which will move from one point to the other smoothly and repeat that every time that you press the record button. There's also motorized sliders out there, such as the sliders that Edochron produce, and a cheaper option which you could also use is just using something called a Lazy Susan, which is just a turntable that rotates round. And the disadvantage to using that is I actually do have one, and the disadvantage is that you can't actually control the up and down tilt. However, that is only £40 I think it cost me, so you can get the same sort of effect just using that Lazy Susan. But like I said, in this case I'm using the DJI Ronin S gimbal, and the reason I'm using the DJI Ronin S over my Weebill S is because the Weebill S, I couldn't get it to do a full 360. It was only allowing me to do up to a 180, but the Ronin S was allowing me to do a full 360, so that's why I'm using the Ronin S. So I mounted DJI Ronin S onto a tripod in the middle of the room, and I went inside the app and used the track function. So once you're actually in the app, it allows you to program in 10 different points. So I programmed in 9 points, and I set a certain speed in between each point depending on how far away each clone was from each other. So once you've actually programmed in your motion, there's not actually that much to it. All you have to do is step into each point that you want your clone to be, and each time you do it, just allow the motion to continue doing its full 360 on the Ronin S. Once it's completed its motion, move to the next point where your clone would be, press the start button again on the DJI Ronin track, and it will track around the room again whilst you're in that position. Repeat that for each individual position that you want the clone to be in, allowing it to do the full 360 each time. And that's pretty much all you have to do. A few things to note if you're actually going to try this yourself. So one is that you want the lighting to be the same, because that will make the masking out in post a lot easier if the lighting of the whole scene is the same and not fluctuating. So don't film it in the daytime with daytime light coming in through the windows, because the light will fluctuate all the time. If you are going to do it in the daytime, try and block out the windows with your curtains or however else you want to do it, and use your own lighting, your own controlled environment. I just waited till it got almost dark pretty much and just had a standard light on in my room, house lights, and I just use that. Make sure you dial in your white balance, so have it on daylight or whatever it looks good in your room. Don't have it at auto, because when it's rotating it might fluctuate the white balance, which is another thing that you don't want. Very important, for each clone point, don't overlap, so make sure that each point is individual and there's no overlapping of your clone or of yourself into the next clone, if that makes sense. And also, just as important, once you have started your recording on the camera and you've started your motion, just leave it recording one big clip and don't try to touch your camera or touch the record button, move the tripod or anything like that. That needs to stay in the exact same position. If you do even move it the slightest bit, it will ruin the whole effect. So make sure you have your tripod, gimbal and camera in one position, not moving, don't touch it, and the only thing you want to do to be controlling it is just pressing start and stop on the app itself. Alright, so once that's done, it's easy enough. You want to bring your one clip into Premiere Pro, and I'll show you how I actually went through the editing process of it as well. Okay, so once you're in Premiere Pro, what you want to do is take your one clip and cut in and out points from the start of each motion to the end of each motion. So for example, here's the first motion going round, and then you have the second one, third, and so on like that. And what you want to do is bring them all in onto your timeline here, and make sure you place them all up above each other. So the first one being right up here at the top, and the last clip, once it's done its full 360 all the way around, being at the bottom. So I've got it here labeled as 1 through to 10. So what you want to do to line them up in the right position is go to the first clip, just bring down the opacity, and as you'll see, they're not in the right position, they're not lined up correctly. So to do that, go down to number 2, and all you want to do is just move it so that, pick a point in the scene. So I'm going to use this door handle, for example, and just move the clip along until you see that the door handles match up. So it's almost there. Just move it. You might have to go frame by frame at some point where the handles match up. So that's pretty much dead on. So that means that these two clips now, they're basically on top of each other, and then they're at the right point. And what you want to do is you want to go and do that for each single clip. Just lower the opacity on the top one, and the one underneath, just move it along until something lines up in the scene, such as the door handle I use as an example. And then once they do line up, they're in the right position, and then you can just go back and make sure that the opacity is back to 100 for the clip above. So you want to do that and go through each of these and do that for that, and that will basically just mean that all the clips are in the right position, and it will just make it easier now for the next step. And so for the next step, you want to just start masking. So I'll show you for this first clip how I masked in the next clip. So basically, if I just turn off the opacity for all the layers except for this one here, and what I did was I just went into opacity, add a mask onto everything on the right of the clone, and then just inverted that. Go to mask path and press the stopwatch to create a keyframe. Go ahead a little bit in the timeline and move that mask along. Go ahead a little bit again, move the mask along, and then once that clone has gone out of frame, I can move the mask all the way along. And if I turn on the opacity for the clip underneath, you'll see that it started to connect them two together. But as you can see, there's a couple of things that you might need to adjust. First one being the actual mask itself. If, for example, it's overlapping a little bit with the second clone, just come in and just adjust where you need to. Just make sure that the mask is actually in the middle of both these two clips all the way through. So again, it's sort of coming over here and touching. So if I move that keyframe along and just make sure, yeah, so that looks okay. I think up until here, it just needs to be adjusted a little bit so it's back in the middle of the two and not upsetting that. Yeah, okay. But one thing obviously you can see as a little bit of an issue is the lighting. So I obviously didn't get the lighting correct in this scenario. I think it wasn't dark enough outside. So from when I did these two individual recordings, the light had obviously changed and got a bit darker. So it's not a big problem because there's a gap in between the two clones. All you have to do is just go to the feather and just feather up as much as you can until it starts to affect either one of the clones. So I can push it up all the way up to, I'm going to go to about 300-ish. Don't think I need more than that with the feather, and it just kind of feathers and blends the two clips in together so you don't see the harsh lines in between. And then yeah, all you want to do is just go through and just check that it looks good. And yeah, so basically that mask and that feather has worked to make sure that the two clips come together and look pretty seamless. So again, with the second clip, all I did was click on the clip and then just add a mask in between the two clips. Again, invert that mask, turn on the opacity for the clip underneath, and again it's the exact same process. Click the mask path, go through and adjust the mask accordingly. Export in the next clip using that mask. Once the second clone is out of the frame, you can then cover up the whole frame with that mask. And again, just check if you need to add some feather. Probably will need to. So there is a little bit of a harsh line there, not as bad as the first one, but then just add a little bit of feather. You can probably go up to about 100 this time, and that should do it. And you just want to repeat that process by going down and merging in the next clip that comes in after that, and the next clip and the next clip. And that's pretty much the whole process of what I did to get it looking the way it did. And after that, all I did was add some sound effects and a bit of music, and voila, that was pretty much the whole effect done. It wasn't that complicated, it just took a little bit of time. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed that little how-to on that effect, and as always, if you did, give it a like, subscribe to see more things like this in the future, and I shall see you in the next video. Take care.